All right, guys, welcome to day 45 of training to qualify for Tokyo 2025. On deck today, we have 6 times 500 meters with 2-minute rest. Guys, we've really replaced our repeat thousands after very difficult workouts with repeat 500s with a little bit of rest, just to keep a little bit of pep in our step and just running a little bit faster while tired. Doing thousands, of course, they're longer, but I also run them just a tad slower. So one of the training adjustments that we've made the last month and a little bit is kind of adding these in. I'm not sure when we'll add the 1,000 meters back. I'll talk to my coaches about that. But yeah, we're just getting adjusted to doing lots of 500-meter workouts after very difficult workouts, or I should say harder workout days. On that note too, we're going to discuss diet today while we're working out. I know I've said in the past that I eat a lot of processed foods before workouts, but that's not always the case. That was more just kind of like a humorous take, even though it is true I do eat processed foods sometimes before hard workouts if I just want something light on my tummy. But diet is such a broad subject. I see a lot of runners and athletes saying oh, here's a day in the life in terms of my diet, and this is what I eat during the day. And it comes naturally to these athletes because their diet is run by their intuition based on them being a professional runner. So what's obvious to them is not obvious to you. Not only that, because these runners have the intuition on what to eat, they can't really explain why they do what they do. Like, how do these runners maintain such a low body fat percentage and perform so well, or have no tummy issues when they run? They just know it intuitively, a lot of them. So what I'm gonna do here is we're going to talk about diet, but we're going to talk about it solely in the respect of losing weight. In yesterday's workout, I said one of the adjustments I'm going to make is losing weight. In the past 3 days, we have been hitting our deficits, our calorie deficits. And for the next few weeks at least, probably closer to 5 weeks, we are going to keep these deficits every single day. Some days higher than others, some days lower, but I'm going to talk about which ways it's easiest to cut calories and the safest ways. And again, guys, I'm not a medical expert or anything like that. This is purely from the perspective of competitive running. I know on tons on social media and tons on play, everyone has their own perspective on, you don't need to count calories, or you don't need to eat this, or, cut processed foods completely out, or you're not allowed to have sugar. And yes, I do have some of those guidelines myself, but there's no real set rules, guys, on cutting weight beyond being in a calorie deficit. So with that said, we're going to get into the workout and we're going to discuss exactly how I cut calories and how I start weighing a lot less over the season, and some tricks and trades of what you can do too to accomplish that, as long as it's healthy and done correctly. With all the ways of cutting weight, I'm going to talk about the way I do it. I like to, for the most part, live by the saying, the more you can do something as a science rather than as an art, the better the outcome will be. An example I like to bring up for this is, I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of that famous chess game, some chess game at the opera. And it's a very famous magical game where all these sacrifices are made and is very artistic. I can't remember the grandmaster's name, it's at the tip of my tongue, but basically it was a very artistic finish, very romantic, as they say. Yet if he faced a modern computer engine, he would have looked like a fool making all of those sacrifices, and suddenly it's not an art piece, because it would be a disaster if he faced a modern computer engine. Now, how do I apply that to my life, or specifically for diet? What we want is the more relevant data points, the better. So what are relevant data points for losing weight? Well, one, the scale. You should measure your weight every single morning and write it down in a spreadsheet. I write it down on a piece of paper, and then I have a spreadsheet of how much I weigh over time. And then beside that, I have a 7-day average. Because as I've said in a previous video too, that there's roughly 3,500 calories in a pound. And say you're in a 500 calorie deficit for the day, yet you ate 2.5 pounds of vegetables at night, which I frequently do, you'll wake up 2 pounds heavier, or sometimes even more pounds heavier the next morning, even though you were in a 500 calorie deficit. And just the pure reason is the amount of food volume and maybe glycogen gained and water retention is much more than the actual fat loss. So to get around this, we have to create a smoothing mechanism, which is why I like the 7-day average. So if you have a 7-day average and you have months and months of data, of weight data, you can see the trend going up and down. So meaning like one day where you're really heavy, or one day you're dehydrated and you weigh not much at all, it smooths out over time. And over the weeks, you'll see kind of like your weight kind of fluctuating like this. So you don't have the emotional decision of saying like, oh my God, I woke up 3 pounds heavier this morning. I need to not eat today. When you look at your 7-day average, you can see that, oh no, this isn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And the second data point that I take, and I believe at a certain point, most runners should take, I shouldn't say most runners, if you're having trouble losing weight properly and healthily, you should probably be keeping track of your calories. Now, this is just much simpler than what most people make this out to be. You can there's lots of programs online that count your calories. I use Chronometer, and so I write down everything in a notebook, and at the end of the day, I write everything down in my notebook in Chronometer, and I have the amount of calories I ate in the day. And I combine that with my third data point, which is the amount of calories I burn per day using my Garmin. Now, I know the Garmin is not 100% accurate. There's going to be no program that's 100% accurate, but I do believe it's more accurate than what most people say it to be, because I've been using my Garmin as data, and it's worked. It's worked. It's relatively accurate. The one thing I will say is on workout days, it's important to wear your heart rate monitor, because that's where you burn the bulk of your calories, or in your aerobic workouts. So when you're wearing the heart rate monitor, it has a much more accurate sense of how many calories you burn. And with that said, on hard workout days, the only thing I've noticed, and you notice this over time too, because being in a calorie deficit or surplus, like it just takes some, finagling over time. My Garmin will undercount my calories between 250 and 400 calories, depending how hard the workout is that day. The less workouts I'm doing, the more accurate the counter is. Now, there are other ways to measure your calories too. There's lots of websites and other apps that will help you and accurately do that for you as well too. So we've went over the three data points that you should keep: your weight, your calorie intake, and your calorie expenditure. Now, there's one more data point intake that I'm going to point out to you that I think is almost a must. In fact, I think it's a must, is your protein intake. I know runners flip out all the time about, and triathletes and all these, they say, oh, I have to have this many carbs, after this many this, that, this. I would say the most important macronutrient is your protein. If you are not eating enough protein, when you lose weight, your body will start eating its muscle as well as the fat, or it will eat more muscle proportionately than it otherwise would have if you're eating the appropriate amount of protein. I don't think there's any way around some of your muscle getting eaten if you're in a calorie deficit for long enough, through mechanisms like autophagy and just catabolism in general. But by maintaining a 1 gram per pound consumption of protein every single day, you can stave off a lot of those problems and reduce your risk for injury as well too. Because if you're not eating enough protein and you're in a 500 calorie deficit and you're replacing it with carbs or fats and things like that, your muscles literally aren't recovering properly. And that was something I neglected when I did my first ever weight cut, when I just tried to wing it. I just tried not eating at all for longer periods of times and having like 1 meal per day. And there's a place for that. And there can be a place for that even now in my current training regimen. But what I would do is I would neglect the protein. So those are the 4 data points that I keep track of every time. The other one, and I mentioned this last video, is I also get a DEXA scan. And this is something I've recently incorporated into my weight cutting regimen, is because, again, we want this to be more of a science than an art. When things are an art, they're more emotional. And that's not good when you come to diet. Again, like being emotional on your diet when you're hungry, you can kind of develop these mental illnesses over time. And with more data, knowing exactly where you are, the less likely that's to happen, but it can still happen. There's still eating disorders, right? Like, so you have to be careful. But knowing exactly where you are in terms of your body composition, how much you're consuming, how much you're burning, and your weight fluctuations over time, your smooth 7-day average, when you have all of that, you can make concrete mathematical decisions rather than saying, oh, should I cut more? Should I cut more? Oh, I should weigh 3-4 pounds less. But if you're looking and you're already at 5% body fat, you're not going to say I need to weigh 4 pounds less. Again, unless you've convinced yourself through emotion that you should. The more we keep it to a science, the less emotional decisions we're going to make. And I found that those are the less emotional decisions I've made. Again, yesterday, I've already said this, but I had around 171 pounds of lean muscle mass on my body. Last summer I measured myself, said I had 169 pounds of lean muscle mass on my body. Like I said, the lightest I weighed was around 173.9 pounds last summer. And this was before I started getting the DEXA scan. And I for sure pushed it too much, but it was a lesson learned on my part. But anyways, the DEXA scan, should come later in your journey to cut weight if you choose to do so, and if it's healthy, and if you've gotten your coach on board with it too. And if you're young, you don't need to cut weight. You are still developing. Your muscles are still getting stronger. And when you are cutting weight over long periods of time, it's just a fact. Your hormone levels will go down. It's much harder to build muscle, if not impossible. If you're at this, like at least if you're in my stage of development, if you're a young athlete and your body is, and you're going through puberty, or you're at the tail end of puberty and your body's still packing on strength and muscle, and you're still getting such an adaptation to training, I wouldn't cut weight. I would just let the natural forces be. This doesn't mean you have to be like 25% body fat, but I'm trying to highlight the importance of going to your coach and asking him or her if you should cut weight or not. And when you do cut weight, make it as scientific, data-driven as possible. I'm going to start showing you guys exactly how much I weigh here and there, and I'm going to show you my 7-day averages to show you in real time how it's done. And I'm really going out on a limb here, guys, because if I do it and, let's say I get injured and things like that, people will say that, this wasn't the right way to do it, etc., etc. But I believe it is. I think we've covered all of the major basis of the important things to track when you're in a calorie deficit, but there's so much more. There's so much more of the little things. And if anyone has been or is going to go in a calorie deficit and keep track, like there's just so many little things too that help. But I just covered all of the main points. Everything else involved with it is like to the person's own will, to the person's own desires, the foods they like, the times they like eating, the composition of fats and carbs that they want to eat. So yeah, if you guys want to hear more of the nitty-gritty about weight cutting or anything else about diet, there's tons to discuss about diet too. Again, like I said, there's being in a calorie deficit, there's being in a calorie surplus, there's maintaining a neutral amount of calories, there's eating more fats some time of the season than others, there's metabolic flexibility, there's what to eat before races, when to eat around your workouts, after your workouts. There's lots of it. If you guys want me to talk about like my experiences with it and what I've researched and found, let me know. But besides that, let's go back to the workout. All right, guys, that was a good workout. I really thought it was. It wasn't flashy or phenomenal, but I felt so good running the times and how I felt running the times. Like I felt good. I didn't feel, I felt efficient. And it's days like these where you remember, okay, I'm in good shape. I'm not garbage. I'm not bad at track. I'm not too old. And, I have the fitness is there. So to run those 500s and those speeds, to finish off in 79.2 and feeling pretty breezy, it puts a smile on my face. It makes me feel a lot better about how things are going. So I'm gonna enjoy the rest of the day. There's a nice breeze cooling me off right now, so I'm gonna jog a lap or two and then I'm heading home. So I'll see you guys next time.